So we're here to have our 2020 and 2021 budget planning session. Let's see if this will work. To start off with, I just want to give a little history on where we've been and where we think we'll be. The city's done an excellent job, I believe, of maintaining a solid fund balance in the general fund. Beginning in 2016, we've not dipped below the 25% of the budget, which is our metric, at any point during the year. Revenue increases and also projects that have carried over into the next fiscal year have resulted in a fund balance that's grown since 2016 by about $3 million through 2019. However, the fund balance did remain stable in 2018 and 2019, but with COVID-19, we have seen a decline in revenue, and we did adopt an amended budget that cut $1.5 million from the original budget of 2020. But we still believe revenue declines in 2020 will result in a fund balance decline of somewhere around $1.8 to $2 million this year. Just some notes on that. Sorry. The original budget was adopted with a balanced budget of $24.5 million. Enhancements that were implemented prior to COVID-19 affecting the city included the purchase of 5 new patrol vehicles through a GMA lease, the implementation of City Hall design services, and a blight remediation project. All other enhancements, including personnel, were put on hold, and the 5 patrol vehicles were reallocated to existing police personnel per a vehicle replacement schedule. Due to COVID-19, the budget was reduced again by 10%, and we also, the council also approved using $1.7 million of reserves to cover operating expenses through the end of the year. We balanced the budget at $23,700,000. And that does take into account the revenues that we took in from the GMA lease, which then is turned into annual expense. The millage rate was approved at 6.25 mils as in previous years, with the revenues being adjusted to account for the additional homestead exemption that was approved last year. Anticipated revenues from property taxes are about $10.8 million, and what we did not do in 2020 was we haven't hired the new positions. We have put a hold on non-essential positions that become vacant. We've not been able to host summer camps or have any of our activities that we had planned for the summer. And I will say that we did have a group come in and rent the facility in Keswick Park to have summer camp. They, to date, have not been able to get enough people interested to actually have that camp. Again, we've implemented some cutbacks in training. We've not hosted any employee appreciation events, and there's some strategic projects that we have not done, such as the fleet replacement program and implementation of Laserfish, which is online storage of documents. The lowlights of the year. Yeah. Well, to continue in the same vein, as of August 31st, our year-to-date general fund revenues were down 20% over previous year. So we actually, predicted fairly well when we did the amended budget. Hotel motel tax revenue is down 48%. Of course, that impacts the public safety building debt payment. SPLOST revenues have decreased 5%, which we were surprised that it's done so well, but that has been helpful. Our average personnel costs rose 4% over 2019, and we are currently carrying a negative balance in our criminal history fund. We have not had the activity with fingerprinting for businesses that we had in the past. We were actually seeing a decline in that prior to COVID. And we recently have joined the state GAPS program, so individuals can go to multiple places throughout the state to get their fingerprints. And that impacts occupation taxes primarily. So with our current status, I showed previously that we expected a decrease with the after COVID hit. When the federal government allocated CARES funding, they did allocate a portion to local governments over a certain population threshold. We did not meet that population threshold. However, the state of Georgia did allocate a portion of their money to local governments. Now, we did not qualify for that because DeKalb County received CARES money. The DeKalb Municipal Association worked with the county, and the county did recently allocate funds to the city, to all the cities in the county. We have not received those funds yet. We believe that we will get those by the end of the month, but we have not received those yet. So I just want to clarify that at this point, that as we move forward with the discussions, this is where we expect to be, but we have not actually received the funds yet. The city was allocated just over $3.4 million, and we did use those funds to reimburse for public safety payroll expenses. The result is that it increased our fund balance, and you can see from the previous chart, it's grown from being about $2 million under where we were in 2019 to about $1.5 to $1.3 million over, and we are anticipating at the end of the year versus 2019. So we've made some assumptions. As we begin the 2021 budget, basically we are assuming with property tax revenue collections that they will not be significantly impacted by COVID-19 until 2022 at the earliest. We're not taking into account delinquent taxes or what might be delayed collections because we're not sure what the impact on that would be at this time. But the impact on property values from any economic conditions usually lag behind the impact on the overall economy by 18 to 24 months. So due to the unique nature of this recession, we're not exactly sure what that looks like in 2022. It could be possible with some stability that the economy recovers without much of an impact in 2022. With uncertainty, it could be worse. So we're just not sure exactly where we are on that. So we have not anticipated revenues out past July of 2022. We are assuming that general fund revenue trends will remain consistent in 2021 with a slight increase over 2020 numbers. And the reason for that slight increase is because we did have several months with no activity. We are assuming that we will not have a complete shutdown and quarantine situation like we did earlier this year. That's why we're anticipating a slight increase. Also, we're predicting in 2022, you'll start to see more of a recovery with a 10% total increase in revenues. So we are preparing, or we've begun to prepare the 2021 budget with the following: a modified zero-based budget, meaning that each department will need to evaluate and defend all line items against an assumption that no funds would be budgeted. Departments may reallocate or restructure funding within the department, but no new programs or enhancements to existing services will be budgeted. We are anticipating no capital purchases will occur in 2021, with the caveat that later I will speak to the need for some public works equipment. We do anticipate that the city will need to allocate between $1 and $1.5 million from fund balance to maintain existing service levels next year. That new debt service would be issued for a city hall at $15 million with a 25-year amortization debt service, and that would be about $820,000 a year, and that the millage rate would be maintained at 6.25. Later today, if we get to that, I did want to bring up what we're currently doing with our capital improvement program. We operate with a 5-year capital improvement program, and going into next year, we just recognize that the 5th year would be without SPLOST at the current time because it'll elapse at that point. So the question is, how do we want to prepare for the next SPLOST? We have time, obviously, it's 5 years away. We have time, but we wanted to start thinking about that. So with that, we have budgeted or shown a couple of scenarios. The first scenario being that we, with the assumption that I just mentioned, that we do not budget any additional funds for any one-time initiatives. And what you would see is a fund balance that in 2020 would end fairly, at 16 million at the end of the year. What we like to keep in mind, and I'm not sure if this will show up, is that the 6 million is our 25% reserves mark. Keeping that in mind, with this, at the low point in 2022, we would anticipate still having about $1.5 million over that minimum mark. In scenario 2, we have an assumption that we would do roughly 1.65 million in one-time initiatives or capital investments. Obviously, as I just mentioned, we would end the previous scenario 1.5 million above that number, that 25%. With this, we end just below in 2022. Now, keeping in mind, that's what reserves are for. This is not unreasonable. What the credit agencies that review our numbers look at is that we have a plan for managing any downturn. And so I believe that what we're putting here together here today is that plan that they'll be looking for. But this puts us just below that 25% number at the end of, or at the low point in 2022. And in assumption number 3, we have $3.5 million roughly to spend on one-time initiatives or projects. And obviously that takes us down another $1.5 million to about $4 million. So about $2 million below our 25% marker. Now, we did look at the debt city with and without the city hall factored in. I mean, it's $800,000 a year. We chose to do a bar graph because
it would show the differences from year to year.
Okay.
It seemed to be the easiest way to show it. We'll have to we've got the years with and years without.
Okay. And so you can kind of see, 2021 is the kind of mustard and teal color with and without. Other points to consider really is just the City Hall financing strategy. I just wanted to mention that as we move forward. We just want to make sure that we have a solid plan, keeping healthy reserves or showing the debt agencies that our reserves are managed well, that if we go below, that we have a plan to pull it above that 25%. And then the other point I wanted to make is that we have already transitioned. At the beginning of this year, we were using hotel motel funds for the the purchase of, construction of the public safety building, community room, and park. Due to the decrease in hotel motel funds, we've essentially transitioned all of that to the general fund at this point. So we do have we've freed up the money that's in the hotel motel fund at this point. You know, being that it's 42% or 48% down from previous years. But that is being carried fully on the general fund at this point. And so really, I just wanted to open it up for general fund discussion. You know, the 2021 budget target and our use of reserves, you know, how much for one-time initiatives and what potential one-time initiatives we might want to do at that point. And Mayor, that's all I have.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. One-time initiatives and what those might be if we did want to move forward with any. That's correct. We do have a closing in October for one property, and other properties have essentially statements of interest or under contract. We do have several under contract, but no date yet.
What does that mean? Does that mean they're under contract, do they have more due diligence that they can perform and then they'll get back out?
Yes.
Under contract, they just, get paid.
Right.
So that, and what kind of liability do we have, or exposure do we have on, say, some of the properties don't close and that kind of stuff? Because that seems to be, I don't see that, there may be in all this, but I
Sure.
don't see that.
If you'll give me just a moment.
But if we were to go like scenario number 3, which is the most aggressive, I guess the way I'm looking at it, and then have some things go wrong with these properties, would be a big loss.
Well, I have this information here. But for some reason it won't travel over into the other. Oh, there it is. We have gotten an analysis. We have gotten an analysis of our debt service, and essentially,
Overall, or just specific questions?
both. I mean, it covers all of it, and essentially, it's a little difficult to see. We are under all of our thresholds for essentially what rating agencies would be looking at in terms of our debt. You know, so from that perspective, we're still, you know, under those thresholds. We're still in a good financing position. You know, obviously, if those continue, I mean, the payments have to be made, and from an annual allocation of payments, the city has been decreasing the allocation, and the DDA has been picking up more of that allocation based on the revenue that they have been bringing in. Catherine, do you?
So we decreased from, the city for the first 4 or 5 years is paying around $250,000 a year to help with the payment. We reduced it down to $80,000 this year, and I think we reduced it more for 2021.
And all the, like, SLX and everybody started making the payments yet on that, or that?
Yeah,
Catherine?
Did our title search pick that up?
No, because there isn't one, there is no easement.
So where does it stand legally?
Right now it stands that, we're waiting to see if they want to counter to. So we've already started the legal process, we're hoping to do a quiet title. But they, I think today was their deadline to let us know.
But that agreement is moving forward with a potential buyer.
What? So I could hear John. I couldn't hear any of the questions on the way over. What is our coverage ratio? You mentioned that we're good with the rating agencies.
Yes.
Where were we? What are we at? What's kind of our cushion?
So here's the numbers I was referring to. So this green bar is the PD building numbers. The blue bar would be a city hall, and the kind of outlined area is the DDA debt. So you can see that we still have some cushion there.
So you showed 3 different scenarios on your.
So what's
Yes.
what's our dollars in 2022 on it? I'm assuming that we've got that the hard line is our cap. We're at a 15% at
Mhm.
1.75.
Mm-hmm.
What's our? Do we know our dollar cushion on 2021 for debt service percentage of expenditures?
It's that 15%. Is that?
But
You're asking what the dollar amount is
it
total?
looks like we're within like a couple $100,000 of it.
Well, this gold comes out at this point. This was an analysis they did looking at the city doing like a parking deck. So it really, you remove this amount and you have more of an.
So we've got like $1.5 million, if that's general fund.
I haven't looked at it in terms of hard dollars. I'd have to go back and look at that, but yeah, it's you know, the Series 2019 bonds are at about 1.2 million. The proposed city hall would be at about 800,000, 820. So that's where those two come in.
You laid out 3 scenarios earlier, right?
Yes.
The bar graph, bar graph,
Yes.
line graph. And all 3 scenarios have the new city hall moving forward correctly.
Yes. We do have, there was a bar graph that had it taken out.
Well, you had, was that another scenario that wasn't shown? I'm just trying to do,
Sure.
recycling my head. You had 3 scenarios that you showed, 1, 2, 3. You had one where you're way above the line.
Right.
Yeah, so you had one that was like trying to close the line and one that dipped through the line. So you-
Yeah.
That one's scenario 1, and that has the city hall.
Yes.
All three of these scenarios you've done. Yes, and then, okay, and then, but this scenario also, going back to the other question, assumes that there's not gonna be any problem with the DDA property. Is that-
Right. These scenarios do not anticipate the city paying any of the debt service for the DDA.
So if this brought closer to the red line, if we had, so, just based on what I've heard so far, scenario 1 would be my preferred scenario moving forward for the guidance, that's just based on what I've heard so far.
Can you help me understand what role the DDA debt plays? I mean, I heard the number 80,000 from you, Catherine. That's what we're paying, and that will only get smaller as the DDA sells property.
And as we collect admin payments from the abatement deals that we've done in the past,
Okay, and that will happen,
it's happening now.
Oh, okay.
Which is why we're able to decrease it to 80,000 this year.
and we just anticipate that getting lower?
Correct.
Okay. One other question, John. The annual payment for the City Hall debt service,
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that it would start, we wouldn't start paying that until April of next year. So we
Correct.
wouldn't be paying that full 820
Next year.
next year. But I mean, that would be the only year that we wouldn't pay it fully, but, okay.
Right.
Just to get a handle on the numbers.
And is that the new city hall,
That would be the new.
leaving off the remodeling of old city hall?
Well, it's a $15 million debt service. So right now, we anticipate, well, as we've seen the numbers, $8 million for the building. We had originally factored in $4 million for site work. Now, I don't have like a clear, a number for that right now. I can't tell you that it will be 4 million just because we're still, doing the survey and due diligence and looking to see if there are any surprises out there for us. Also, 4 million is a pretty strong number for all that work. We were anticipating that based on doing a lot of hardscaping in the plaza, the future plaza area. Factoring that in, 12 million for the city hall building, you have another 3 million there in that $15 million for us to work with. So it's just a question of, obviously, we wouldn't issue the bond until we know what that number is. But we've already built in kind of that, a little bit of, area for extra expenses, whether that comes in the form of a contingency or the art conversion, renovation.
Okay, so we have this whole list of potential one-time initiatives.
Yes, there's, I did provide some information on one-time initiatives, but that's not all-inclusive.
Right.
And are these in any of the scenarios?
Well, simply, the scenarios are simply, we do not do any one-time initiatives.
That's absorbing all 3.4 million into the
Well-
city budget, right?
That's essentially,
Yeah.
we have no one-time initiatives, and this would be having about $1.6 million in one-time initiatives, and then this would be spending, $3.5 million in one-time initiatives.
There's a lot of one-time initiatives that may or may not be COVID related, like Laserfish, and probably some other ones, but we do have COVID testing and rent assisted and business grants shown in there. So we could do some of these initiatives, I think, without necessarily having to take on the full load. And you could also spread them out over time too,
Correct.
like longer, having to go longer.
You could.
So what I gathered, the big part of this conversation really needed to get to, and the bones of it, was exactly kind of where John's going right now. And that was, scenario 1, 2, and 3, and I know I've talked to several of you about this individually. What do we want to do with that money? And here's a list of things that staff is suggesting. Maybe y'all have suggestions, but I think it'd be a good idea to get a general consensus that, yes, we are going to do some one-time expenditures. I know how some of y'all feel on that. John, I don't think when you said you wanted scenario 1 that you completely understood that meant there
I
were
think you're right.
none of these, right?
I
Okay.
think you're right.
So.
I was just looking at where the little.
Yes, sir.
We all like those numbers too. They're better,
And
but.
I don't want to help keep us focused and understand it myself as well, make sure I understand where everybody's coming from, because I think I've told each one of you individually that this was going to be a good, solid discussion about what we want to do with some of these funds. So scenario 1 is really off the table. We are going to spend some of that CARES money on some of these items here.
And I just want to say that because CARES money is federal money, we utilize the CARES money for
Right.
payroll, public safety payroll expenses. The result is that we have a little extra, in
So
our
for the, so
fund
again,
balance.
thank you very much, John, and that's very important. So for this discussion, we're talking about general fund expenditures now at this point. And how much of that general fund expenditures do we want to have on these one-time initiatives, short-term, and as John Mace has laid out, possibly even some longer term. So that's where, I'd like to go. I think we have some of these here, one-time initiatives. I think maybe we see where that takes us and see what everybody thinks they want to, and get a kind of a number, an idea about where that takes us. And then if you have any others that you've thought about that aren't on this list, please let staff and your fellow council members know that as well.
Well, I really like partnering with St. Vincent de Paul, since they don't, it seems like most of the money is going to actually get to people. It's not going to have a whole lot of admin type costs associated with it. At least that's the way it looks.
Yeah.
I could be wrong on that. Whereas the other one has a 15% consulting fee, and that kind of sticks in my craw a little bit. But I don't know.
Well-
Somebody's got to do it.
I have a question about the business loans. And I guess, was I having a conversation with you, Leslie, where we were talking about straight up tax relief rather than a program? Was that I was talking to you about?
And John and I have talked about that too, or was that me and Al, one or the other? Basically cutting some of the tax.
Rather than running a program that we have to spend extra money to administer as well.
That is an option. I mean, occupation taxes it would be spread out throughout all businesses, and just recognizing that occupation taxes aren't usually in a significant sum of money for most businesses, but it's still.
And the ones that they are, you're probably not looking to help so much, like Walmart. And nothing against Walmart, love Walmart, but I think their business probably went up during COVID. All right, so those are the
Yeah.
ones that pay much higher than your law office or your restaurant.
So I looked at a list of our OC taxes, and I don't think that's the right way to go.
Right.
They're too low, it's not enough.
They're too low for the folks that we would want to help
For
the
the folks
most.
that you want to help.
I worry a little bit about the administration of that too, so making sure that we're doing it in a fair and equal manner. I'm assuming that's where the consulting fee piece comes in. But, you know, I do worry about the squeaky wheel gets the grease a little bit on that. Whereas that fear or trepidation isn't really there with something like a St. Vincent de Paul. I'm not saying that we would, I just worry about us being able to avoid it, or, you know, establishing a process or mechanism that eliminates that risk.
If I could, I would ask Catherine Lee to speak a little bit to how that would be arranged. And understand, we actually worked with another city and identified, or through their RFP process, to identify a potential company that would help us with that. So,
No, you can see it. We got the memo.
There we go, man. I tell you what.
So
Third world country right here.
we've been,
Just get a couple medals and bars.
it's on trend.
That's okay.
So we've been in talks with LISC, is who John was talking about. This nonprofit company, they're nationwide, but they have worked most recently with Decide to Cab on their loan administrative process. They're working with Tucker. They're just finishing up a big loan/grant program in LA. So they have a lot of experience working with municipalities and other nonprofits for their grant programs. The way it would work, essentially, they run everything back end, right? They set up the system, they set up the applications. They've walked us through a process of what they would suggest we do as far as who is eligible, and it would be more of a lottery system with it weighted on minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses. But to try to keep the process as simple and unburdensome as possible for our businesses. They've been great to work with. They have lots of experience. They would have someone on staff or contract someone on staff that would help walk our businesses through the process. And they can get someone who speaks Spanish, or if they need some type of translation services. So it's a turnkey operation that's very sophisticated, and something that we, as staff, we don't have the capability to do. So if we decide to go down the business grant route, I have a lot of confidence enlist to be able to help us with all the administrative back end.
So when you say staff doesn't have the capability to do it, what exactly would we be needing or lacking in
It's
order
more
to
of
do it
them-
ourselves?
The more, one, the time, because we're anticipating quite a few applications. The way we do it, we're anticipating we would do 2 rounds of applications. That's usually how it's done. And it would be handling the volume, but also making sure that we had the correct paperwork, what they're really looking for, having the amount of staff that could go through all the applications first to make sure they're eligible in the first place to be in the short list, in the running. And then also following up with their numbers, their financials, for everyone who does get a grant. That's also very time consuming as well.
So I guess what I would say to that is I certainly don't want to put any more on staff's plate, but I'm having heart pains paying $75,000 for spreading around 500. Not to say we're even going to go with that number, but 15%. It just feels like we could put that back into the community ourselves. And I wonder if we're just making this way too complicated. If we can't, is there not some way that we can sit down and just look at a list of all of our businesses and see what their annual revenues are or how many employees they have and decide that this is a dollar amount of a grant that we would want to give to them to help them pay their, even if it's just paying their mortgage or their rent for 1 month or something like that. Not, I'm not saying get bogged down into the weeds. I'm just saying, hey, can we say, okay, we've got X amount of businesses in the city that bring in this amount of revenue according to what they're reporting to us. They have this amount of employees, and can we give them $1,500 if they got 1 employee, or can we give them $2,000, or what can we give them, and not make it a very complicated application type process? Because I want to spread it around. I want to help as many folks as we can help to be able to pay at least one mortgage payment on their building or something.
The federal government requires a lot of reporting, and this is federal money, so you
Well,
can't get away
it's
from
not
that.
anymore.
No? Okay, all right, so then that's really not an issue.
Not for the federal reporting side, no.
Okay, all right.
I mean, I think we can give it in any manner that we wish to give it at this point. I just don't want to. I don't want to overcomplicate it, and I don't know that. I mean, so we've got somewhere around the number of 500 businesses or so, or that's what you guys told me when you were handing out the posters for the mask ordinance. That there's about 500 brick and mortar businesses, storefront businesses. So if we know how many businesses we got, we know what they do, we know about what their revenues are, there seems to be some way that we could equitably distribute something to each of them. I'm not thrilled with the whole lottery system. I mean, people have, even with the federal funds, people that really needed it lost out because they didn't get their stuff approved quick enough, or they didn't get it in quick enough, or they missed the lottery itself, or so I just really want to see us help as many of our small businesses as we can, and I don't know the process of how to do it.
I think what you're hitting on is exactly what's scaring me a little bit, is that to do that, we're making a statement as to what we value. Like, for example, just in there, you said, we have 500 storefronts, even if it's 1,000 per storefront. Well, now we value retail and not B2B. And so I worry about the broader statement we're making. If we do something like that and we administer it, I'd almost rather have us come up with a set of base qualifications, listen so many employees, listen so many, whatever it is, just something broad, and say the first 500 people to apply get $1,000, and we're not making a statement about, we're not selecting specific people. We have this general criteria of businesses we want to support, whether it's revenue, employees, more than so many employees, less than this, but I worry about the statement we're making. I worry about us being equitable. I worry about us picking the businesses we see, or the retail businesses, versus the others that need it just as much and maybe impacted more just because we don't see them day to day. And so that's my innate fear with a program like that. I think if we do that, and I agree with you, 75 grand's a lot to just give away. Maybe we do just agree on a set of qualifications, and we say it's first come, first serve, because I don't want us to be put in a position to make a statement as to what we support and what we don't. And I don't want staff to be put in a position where they're trying to decide that without clear guidelines from council. So I think I agree with you, it needs to be simple, but I don't think it needs to be simple to the extent of we got, 500 storefronts or whatever it may be. It needs to be something where we push information, we have our criteria, you meet the criteria, first come, first serve. Whatever we do to make sure we're not picking and choosing, because having gone through those, I don't think we're gonna get it right on a one-time thing, no matter how hard we try.
And that,
Yeah. Gold rush, or what? You say it starts Friday. How many businesses do you think will show up on Friday trying to?
yeah, and we don't know, I mean, part of the lottery concept is that we'd have like a 6-day opening for this first round of applications, and the lottery concept that, first come, first serve maybe is not quite as equitable as the lottery concept, but then we'd have the second round. So if folks miss the first round and then they see all the marketing and articles about the first round, then they can apply for the second round. That's the concept behind this too. Yeah, that's the hope that we,
Why would you do it? Go off, didn't know anything about it?
And probably a
Well, we
lot of the
also-
businesses that need it the most would not, they're gonna be some of the ones that are the last to hear about it, to be honest.
yeah, which is why.
And a lot of
we're hoping a
translation
second round,
services,
because-
yeah.
Yeah, you got a lot of translation, you got a lot of things to consider. I don't even pretend to know the answer here, but.
So if I could try to help, I'd just ask staff then, is there, and I agree with everything that y'all have said. Is there a way, that $75,000, just 15% does seem like an awful lot, but it sounds like, they got their stuff together and they know how to work it. It seems the most equitable for everybody out there. It's just a lot of money to pay somebody to administer this. Is there any way we could do a similar program? And again, like Brian said, not wanting to put too much on our staff. You guys already do a whole bunch of great stuff, but any way that we can do this internally and still keep it equitable to all the businesses?
Well, a couple of statements I'd make there. As you mentioned, they have their act together. They have a process that they can.
Yep.
Essentially, if we called them tomorrow, they could issue these grants. By basically, we could open it tomorrow, and they could release these funds immediately. If staff has to do this, there's a couple of concerns I have. One is the time and the technology that we have versus what they have. The second is there will be the possibility, with a third party, it's an arm's length transaction. We are providing the funds to them. They are providing the grants based on their scenario. There's no, concern that you've got, politics involved in who might get the funds. We identify the list of criteria, and they operate within the list of criteria. If we do all that and it's, kind of stored on our computers, I'm not sure how we would identify who would win, in that scenario. Now, if you, go ahead.
Have you gone as far as looking at what that criteria would be?
Basically, we just took some ideas from what they provided to us, the third party.
Yeah, so they'd have to meet the following criteria, and these could change if you want them to. Organizations must have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID. Nonprofit organizations and private for-profit businesses include sole proprietorships that are eligible. Organizations must operate within the city of Chamblee. They'll have to show a business license. We have 200 employees or less that are eligible. We anticipate that being a much smaller number for the majority of them. And then they have to be in operation since September 14th, 2019. That's 6 months before the shutdown started. And it has to be a reimbursement for funds that they've spent March 1st through December 31st.
Well,
And again, we can make, we can change that if we wanted to say, businesses with less than 25 employees or, manufacturing with more than a certain number.
Just keep in mind that just looks like the city's favoring
Sure.
one type over another, if we go that route.
Do
Sure.
you think that we're talking about giving each of these businesses enough money to truly make a difference in their long-term viability? I mean, are we just throwing good money after bad, or would we be better off supporting citizens?
That's the big question, right? I mean, we've talked anecdotally to businesses. They said it would help to some extent. Now, if a business is struggling so much, I don't think 10,000 is going to be what keeps them in business if the hardship's still something they're experiencing throughout the end of this year, right? I think it depends. I do think there would be a lot of businesses that it would help, but no, I don't think this is the final fix for all of our
And
businesses.
What do you think the average
I
grant
would-
size would be based on what they're telling us? I mean, I know 10's the max, but are we talking like 500, 1,000, 1,500?
We have 3 tiers. It's 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. They have to be able to show that they need to use the full fund, so they can't just ask for 20,000 hoping they'll figure that out. We do think because of the size of Chamblee businesses, the majority are going to go after 5,000.
So didn't
And I
we,
would just say this, that's the numbers they provided us. We can change those. So if we wanted to max it out at 10,000, or if we wanted to change those, we could. To your question about, kind of the ROI, this is not something that we're really collecting any data on after the fact. It's really, if you've spent this money, you get, you're eligible if you receive the funds. There's not really any kind of, after action follow-up.
so, what we're talking about right now is the small business grants loans, and we've got a number of 500,000. Can that number change? And so if we were to add all of these, the whole list in the potential one-time initiatives, not scenario 2, that's the full amount, that would spend all the money that we're talking about spending? Or would go over?
Scenario, yes, this, what I provided, and these are just numbers I put out for discussion only purposes, would be that scenario 2. I did have in the list above the scenario 2 example that you could use some of these funds for more like purchase of incubator space or things like that. That is not included in the scenario 2 numbers.
Okay.
Because that was more sizable.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the way I understood it, Leslie, is and I just got it as I was sitting there looking at this scenario 2, if we did the, half, 1.6, and of course that number can go up or down on whatever y'all want to decide to do with it, but this just gives you an example of what you could do with that money.
Right.
It sounds like business grants and rent assistance are a go for everybody. So how much do we fund with that? Testing is important. Brian's brought that up to us several times. Hazard pay for our police. That's, other jurisdictions have done that, but I don't know that we've specifically, or I've had any conversations with any of you. I have with staff. Sanitation trucks, streaming meetings, and Laserfish are things that are there at the bottom of the list, things you could do with the money, but it sounds like, if we're not going to go there, then let's figure out what we want to spend it on, how much we want to spend it on, and then in what buckets we want to put it in. And I think that will help us then come up with our own scenario, which is, I think, the direction the city managers look for. You got scenario 1, 2, 3, and scenario what the council goes for.
Yeah.
Exactly. If I could make a pitch real quick.
Yo, please, John, sell it away.
So we do need a sanitation truck, just in general. And I would add
Thank you,
that
Kathy.
what we are looking for, or what we have looked at, is purchasing a truck that would allow for a one-person operation. One person could drive that truck. It would be a sidearm loaded truck, which could really help us if this continues. Right now, we have 3 people on a truck, and if somebody gets sick, that's going to take out the whole truck. So that's really one of the things that we're looking for. That's probably the most expensive in terms of an operational item. Streaming meetings. Right now, Brittany Lindsay, who does a fantastic job, say hello, Brittany. Streaming, she does this for us. She puts this all together. there is the opportunity here to have a third party that would manage this process. They would stream it live, and they would do closed captioning. Thank you.
For the hearing impaired.
Yes. So, so that would be beneficial in terms of just being, you know,
You know what, as far as streaming meetings go, let's stop doing it and come back to it a couple years from now when this is done. Because I don't know the benefit. People get to watch us, but they don't get to interact with us, so that's
Okay.
not, it's not the same thing as attending a meeting.
Yeah.
So,
I would say,
just say that for that money, what we're doing and what your crack team is doing back here is working for us.
yeah.
And it's still some of the best in the area.
Right.
Whether it's Brookhaven or any of the other.
So can we say we just, Darren, what were you gonna add?
no, I was just going to say that looking at the scenario 2 list.
Best in the area.
Streaming
What we're doing
meetings.
already.
That we are. Streaming meetings and business grants are the 2 lowest on my list, because I agree that Brittany and the team are doing an awesome job on streaming, and I think business grants is a lot of money, and we're not going to really, I think people will go, that's great, thank you, but I don't think the impact is there as when you're giving it to individuals and the dollars that we're going to be giving it out. It's going to be high dollars, few folks, or it's going to be lower dollars, a lot of folks, where it's not going to really change anything. And I think spending, 30% of the total dollars on that is just a lot for the benefit we'll get. So that would be my take if we're to cut out. It would be streaming meetings and business grants. Not because I don't think they're important. I just don't think they're going to really make that much of a difference in the big scheme of things.
Is the Laserfish, that's kind of almost absolutely necessary for just helping to take the load off of when we get open records requests, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
it would. It is an open platform, so you could find a lot of records online.
Yeah.
It does have that component. It also, right now, a lot of our records are only in hard copy format, so it would allow a little more collaboration between departments as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's,
I notice that, I'm not sure if stuff that has been cut out of the budget because of the decreases, are any of those things on this list that like, oh, well, we had to cut this, but perhaps we could bring it back to the budget with this?
Laserfish was one of those items, but that's really the only one that we brought back. The sanitation truck would be a request next year, kind of regardless. So that could be considered the same. We did not go back and kind of reestablish the ones that we cut this year. I do think those are in our kind of operating plan. Those would be the first enhancements that we would want to bring back once the economy starts to turn.
I just remember the police that had to, the new positions with police that had to get cut. It was just a shame.
Other comments on this?
How much of this do we need to solve today?
Really, this is more to get your input, so I think this is something you can come back at a later point and make a decision on some of these. Obviously, some of these we can start pretty quickly. Some of these would take a little bit more spin-up time, but this is something we could revisit in the budget amendment that we can produce in October for the council meeting for this year, and then next year's budget. We'll have another meeting before we enter into next year's budget.
So what I would like to see us do, since you said there are some of these that we could move forward with, the rent assistance is one for me that just hits our constituency right away. And I love that we're partnering with St. Vincent de Paul that has a program in place. I think that's the quickest way right now to help some of those folks that may be looking at getting evicted and helping keep them in their home. That's one of the things I do believe that as a city, I've said to y'all numerous times, that, we are in the service delivery business. That service delivery that we do is to keep people in a clean and safe environment. Sanitation, clean and healthy, parks and recreation, and our, you know, public safety, but helping keep people with a roof over their head, to me, is as important, if not more important, than trying to figure out how to help our businesses, which I think we need to do as well. But if everybody would agree with that, I see a lot of head nodding going on, I think we could decide that we could kick that off and.
Absolutely.
Checks a lot of boxes.
Right.
And do we know what their process is?
Catherine, can you speak to St. Vincent de Paul
I
process?
don't know the specifics of the process. They already do a lot of the rent abatement in the city, or within the zip codes in the city, so we would just follow what they were doing already.
So I'm just going to be blunt. I guess my question is when you apply for rental assistance through St. Vincent de Paul, my question would be, do you have to provide a social security number or citizenship status? If
We can ask that question. I'm not sure what that,
I was over at St. Vincent de Paul last week. It's a fabulous organization. I got a tour of their new building, great facility. But I want to make sure that we're helping all of our citizens equally. And so my concern would be just to make sure, I'm all for giving them the money to dispense out it. They can do it a lot quicker and a lot better than we can, I'm sure. But I would want to make sure that it's equally spread.
we can look into that and provide that information to you.
And it would be definitely for Chamblee citizens, not, because they serve more than just Chamblee.
Right.
Right. Right now, they break it out by zip code, so it would need a little bit more refinement, but yes.
Mhm.
I will refine my comment to say this so that it can move forward even quicker. Let's go ahead and put a dollar amount on it, but if there is a stipulation where they're requiring that kind of information, I would ask that for the city funds that we're giving them, that be stricken from their application process.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that, Brian, if there's no legal box for some reason they can't check. But yes, I would agree with that, absolutely. And to Leslie's point, as Catherine just said, break it out by 30341. I would like to make sure that we do it just for Chamblee residents, because, you know, Brookhaven can decide what they want to do, and unincorporated, I mean, we have limited funds. I mean, we'd love to help everybody. But I'd also like to have that stipulation as well, and look, maybe they can't for some reason, and then maybe we got to find another way to get the money into people's hands. And I hadn't thought it through as far as you did, Brian. I think that's a great suggestion. I think that it's just like John says, checks a lot of boxes, and hopefully we can do it like quickly. So if you could look into that for us, Mr. Manager, I think that one right there was a no-brainer.
So I might suggest for 2020, $100,000.
Works.
We can do that. It's September now, so I was just allocating a 3-month portion, so I think they would just want to understand at what level we're allocating, or how many families, you know, we anticipate helping overall.
I get it, but if we can do more quicker, I would rather do it now than to wait till
Okay.
21.
Can we do this? Yes, I agree. Can we do this? Can we see if we can't maybe get someone at St. Vincent Paul that has their finger on the pulse of this, find out what that needs assessment is, and say that this council is very agreeable across the board to helping with this program to the greatest extent that we can, and maybe just come back to us with a little more information, and we can take it from there. All right? And so I think there's agreement that yes, and we'd like to see more. Maybe there's not a way to spend that much there's not that need. I just don't know. I don't know if it's 30, 100, 3 million. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that need rental assistance, though.
There is one line in here that says they spend $16K a month in Chamblee on area for 70 families.
Okay.
Just trying to put a number on the amount. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes, I think what we're giving staff is a little bit of leeway here. And y'all are agreeing that we want to do this, and they'll come back and let us know. And if there's a real big problem, we'll convene everybody back together again. If everybody's like going, yeah, okay, that's what we agreed to right here, is to direct staff to find out what the needs is, how quickly can we help everybody. But a couple other requirements, they live in the city of Chamblee for sure. And we just need to know that, I think, before we can put whatever, a number on it. But to the extent that we can help as many families as possible, that would be great.
John, and police hazard pay, did you give any thought to public works folks that are out there every week as well? And any hazard pay for them, or is this more related to the political climate than the COVID climate?
Well, no, this is COVID related. Police hazard pay, we looked at police. We had actually established some different work schedules for public works staff. Now, I believe they are now back to full operations. But initially, we had them working. Al, can you jump?
20 to 30 hours. Basically 20 to 30 hours a week.
But they were getting paid full pay.
Full pay.
So they've kind of already got their
Yeah.
hazard. I had asked the same question.
So police are not getting paid full pay?
No, they are, but they're working full weeks too.
Yeah,
So-
police are getting full pay, but they're not getting anything above that.
So I'm just looking at if we're talking about the risk of exposure and that kind of thing, the guys riding the sanitation truck have a lot higher risk than
Yes,
the
sir.
police out in the field. So it'd be great. I mean, we're probably not talking that many folks to
Right.
to
What
lump in
we're
with that.
talking about, the Darren, they were only working 20 to 30 hours a week
Initially.
and getting paid.
And still getting,
and
I got
paid for 40
I
hours.
got you.
a
I
week.
didn't understand what you're saying.
Right.
Okay. So they've already gotten it in effect through short schedules.
Yes.
That's one I'd like to see us move forward with as well, but I don't know where everyone else is on that.
I like the way you put it in as far as like your priorities, like what you like and what you're seeing that you like. That's definitely the police hazard pay, the COVID testing, the family rent assistant, and the small business things. Those are like, I mean, if we're
Right.
talking about a list, those are my top four, if that's helpful.
No, that's very helpful, Karen. Thank you. So everyone else okay with the police hazard pay?
Yes,
As outlined here?
yes,
Very good. So you got that one, John. And then COVID testing,
yes.
I'm looking at Brian because he brought it forward to us at one point before, and I quite frankly don't have my finger on the pulse of where we are or what we've been able to accomplish. But does that amount of money help, at least for now, with more COVID tested, Brian?
Does it help, John?
Well, it's essentially budgeted for 3 weekends. That's what that budget represents. So if we wanted to do more than that, another $8,000 would get you another weekend. And what we have here is the idea that we would go to apartment complexes and move them around throughout the weekend, because we do have the new mega, or it's, I guess technically not a mega site, but the Brand Smart parking lot is a testing site now. So, but the idea behind this was moving those along Buford Highway and that area, and having 3 of those.
Who's doing the Brand Smart testing?
DeKalb County,
So they moved that
from the, yes.
Okay.
So
I guess
I'll say this, DeKalb County is doing an amazing job up at Brand Smart. And I know we throw them under the bus a lot, but but the health department is doing an amazing job up there.
That's
and,
awesome.
And so I'm still very much interested in, again, getting this to the people instead of the people coming to us. So I trust that $25,000 is enough to do some pop-up events in the apartment complexes along Buford Highway themselves. And so I'll leave that up to you guys, but, for the record, the turnaround time up here has been about 12 hours. And that's just, that's amazing.
That's great. Yeah.
So,
Okay. So you got that?
We
We're
can move
checking
forward
boxes.
with the 3,
3,
and
yeah.
then if we see a need for more, we can talk about that
Right.
later.
I think it's going to be, trying to find 3 specific apartment complexes to choose to which one will be the most effective, I think is going to be tough with the
Well, we have
logistics
people
and
we
all
can
that.
ask.
Huh?
We have people we can ask, Vecinos and people like that, like
Right.
they'll know. I think they'll have a good idea of where's a good place to put that?
Well, and John, I mean, you could always come back later and staff could say, well, hey, here's one we probably should have gotten, and that's another $8,000, and, you know, we can make it, you know, this gets us into our next council meeting. We could, if we recognize someone asks staff, or if they come to us and say, hey, we missed an apartment complex, we should, you know, we can always try to pick that up. It's not, this isn't just, hey, we're done with it.
Right, my point is there's a lot more than 3 or 4 apartment complexes. There's probably 30 or 40.
Right. I get it.
So that's the kind of the,
Yeah, but you, it,
I almost think like going to Plaza Fiesta and things like that where there's a high volume of people is better, but that's, again,
Would you
I
expect-
don't know. There's probably smarter people than me to ask, but it just
would you
seems.
expect that other apartments around the testing site would also participate? Or are you looking at, this is going to be limited to people that live in a particular,
No, it would be open to all.
yeah.
And this would be a
It-
partnership,
And
right?
It would be a partnership, and I would say we have spoken to some of the commercial areas as well, and some of them are open to it and some are not, so.
Yeah, Plaza Fiesta isn't open to it. They don't really have the room. Their back parking lot they use for other events throughout the month. So they said they didn't want to do it. Now, it depends on who's doing the testing. Obviously, if we're paying this private company to do the testing, we can tell them that we want it to be more open than just to the apartments. What makes it easier when we open it up to a bigger group is the registration process. If we can get Los Vecinos to help us encourage folks to register ahead of time, then we can get an even bigger group, you know. So maybe we do one location on Plaster Road, but we can get registrations from around there. That would be the goal when we're doing these pop-ups.
All right, very good. So we got rent assistance, and staff's going to come back to us with just some answers, but we're trying to help as many as we can. Police hazard pay at 500, and then COVID testing, at least 3 for now. You know, with some discussion about business grants, I think a lot of us wanted to do that. I think Darren made a very good point, but maybe on the opposite side of most in trying to help figure us out. But I do agree, it just, I just don't know how you do it equitably across the businesses. And is there something better we could do with the $500,000 or however, to help the businesses? I don't have the answer, but I do think that it's a sticky wicket. We all want to help, but is this the right way to do it? But it's what staff's presented to us because they feel like that somebody's invented a way to make this happen.
Do y'all have any other word from the business community about like, gee, we could really use a hand with blah, blah, something that we haven't heard about or expected?
No, I mean, I will say that a lot of the business community has said that they're excited and want us to move forward with our events again, just to get people, you know, out again. Obviously, that's not something that we're pursuing right now, but you know, in terms of any other thoughts or concerns, we haven't heard any.
It's too bad we couldn't come up with, and it's like some sort of gift card that could be spent in Chamblee businesses. I think that would, you know, whether it's $20 given to the citizens and they have to spend, I mean, I'm sure it's a logistical nightmare, I know it, but it's just in my head, I think that would be a great idea because then people typically, when they go someplace, they always spend more than the 20, you know, the $20. They may spend $100 if they got a $20 gift card or something. So, but I just don't know how you would, I don't even have a clue.
Right.
I'm laughing a little bit because I
program-
was just thinking that's $15 for every resident. Send them all a gift card and get it out the door.
Yep.
I don't know, John. I mean, this is tough, and I think y'all have probably tried to rack your brains as to how we can help our businesses. I appreciate, and I think we all appreciate your staff has come forward with a plan. I just don't know that there is a agreement at this point as to how we help our businesses. Is there any other work or any other way you may be able to look at it or do some other research, a survey, something to give us a little bit more guidance to what are people looking for? And across the board, you know, we're not talking about just retailers. You know, the restaurants seem to be doing all right. I, you know, have been in most of them recently. was a Mad Italian today for lunch. The place was as packed as with all their social distancing as you can get. But you know, the restaurants, are they going to struggle? And what about, you know, our other businesses that have had to, you know, pay rent, but people are working out of home? You know, how do we help some of them?
We can certainly do a survey. We can also come back with some other ideas from our business outreach coordinator can look into that and bring us back some ideas. We can certainly do that probably within the next, 30 days.
Okay, I'm good with that. As far as your pitch for the sanitation truck, I think that's a great idea as well, but I would suggest we look at that at next year's budget. You know, start looking at it and saying, okay, well, you said we weren't going to look at any, capital equipment going into 2021, but if you make a, compelling case for it and seeing what the next, 3-4 months holds for us, with the COVID environment, with the economic environment, where are we on that? Does that sound agreeable? Mm-hmm. Everyone?
Yep.
Is there anything else that we've missed? I think we've done some good work here, but is there anything else that we need to look at?
I mean, so where are we leaving the discussion with City Hall and the Art Center? And, I mean, we said we were going to talk about that, and we kind of brought it up, but we haven't really talked it through, so.
Right. If we're done with this piece of it, then I would move on. The question of the City Hall is something that we can discuss now if you'd like.
No,
I mean,
that's fine. We can have that discussion, but
Yeah.
I guess, are you ready, y'all ready to move on? And we've done the work we can do right now for helping our businesses and our residents.
I think we come back to the business part of it.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure. But yeah, we can absolutely talk about it, and I think that's what John said at the beginning of the meeting. And I don't have a hard stop at 3, and we can go as long as you want. But he gave us, the capital, if we got to the capital improvement side of things, which City Hall is the biggest project out there right now. So, and the biggest project probably next to the police station that we've done. So yeah, let's move on to the capital improvements portion, please.
Sure. So we do recommend moving forward with the City Hall project, and the reason for that is really twofold. One is it does advance and keep the momentum going with the town center projects. The second is that we feel like we can make some money by renting the City Hall as either a sauna in the summer or a meat locker in the winter, and we're just it is a building that needs a little love and a little work. It also removes this building and opens this site up for first initially parking, but then potentially some economic development activity. So that would be the recommendation, to move forward with that. It does, assist with all of those reasons. In terms of not moving forward with it, it's roughly $820,000 a year, for 25 years. So that would be, the thought there of what you're saving. Really, that's just open for discussion. It is something that would require, a debt service for us to move forward with.
So I think that if we, for some reason, came up with a scenario there where we wanted to bail on City Hall at this time, I think the danger of that is that if we're seeing like pulling the plug on downtown Chamblee redevelopment, then so will everybody else. And I think that, if you just look at it as $800,000 on a spreadsheet versus, some of these properties, that are like valued at $200,000 or $300,000 turning into $10 million sites or more, which I don't think is unrealistic. I think there's some economic impact that you would suffer potentially. Like I said, because I think part of the attraction for a lot of this stuff that's been discussed is the different projects. is because Chamblee's going to be investing so heavily in the downtown area.
So I couldn't agree more, John. What y'all have heard me say, and I think we've seen it happen, and seen it happen in other jurisdictions, is a lot of times, private investment follows public investment. And I think that the lunch I had today was with a guy that owns one restaurant. It's substantial. It'd be really cool for our community. He wanted to know what's going on in our town center. They're looking at property in our town center. When we're talking with Seven Oaks and they're talking with their potential tenants, right now going into, another building in the city that we all know about, but also that trying to find that one or two tenant that may be looking to move out of a tower somewhere, getting a little bit more controlled space, especially COVID related. They're having a lot of interest in maybe one tenant wants 50, another tenant wants 50 or 100. They all want to see that investment that we're putting in. Another conversation I had with this particular guy today that I have with others is the investment that we're putting in the rail trail. Unfortunately, we got, a substantial grant from the ARC to continue that forward. But I said we were eating up at the Mad Eye and was talking about the investment the city will eventually be making in Nancy Creek and the trail coming through there. And he wanted to know, just because we were sitting there, wanted to know what was happening with 285 and talking about, that investment. So I would ask that y'all continue to move forward with the City Hall, seeing it as a great investment in our town center, and a fear, as John put it, that, there's a very substantial brewery that's looking to move into Chamblee right now, and could bring, and the guy said, are you ready in downtown for as many as 1,000 people a day? And I said, absolutely. So that's happening as well. And they're all interested in the investment that we're making in our town center.
How long would it take us to get construction-ready docks? I mean, are you talking 3 months, 6 months, 2 months? Do we have any idea from GMC?
We, I believe,
They're gonna be at 30% October 1st.
yeah.
So realistically, we're looking at design docks probably February of next year?
Well, we're looking at kicking off construction in March or April of next year. So
Okay, so-
that would be the pace that we're on. So we would have probably 90% docks by the end of the year, I would think.
But I think what everyone's saying makes sense. I mean, there is some concern about that, but I agree with John that if we put the brakes on, then all of a sudden everything's going to stop. I do worry about the 20% premium on it for existing City Hall. I don't think that's a bad project per se, but I wonder if there aren't other ways we could maybe accomplish the same thing without spending the dollars, even if it's reduced rent, free rent, whatever it may be, to a third party that could come in and program the space and build it out and create a viable business. I just think there's probably some other ways we could accomplish that.
Talking about the current City Hall?
Talking about the current City Hall, I think there's some other ways we
Just
can
wanna make sure
accomplish that
we're-
without spending $3 million. And I think at the same time, there's other ways that we could get a performing arts space either in the police station or in City Hall without nearly the same level of economic expense. I understand the desire to keep it. I understand the desire to program it. I do wonder if there are other ways to do it without the city spending money, even if it's by not collecting revenue on leasing it out and letting someone else come in and sell food, alcohol, whatever it may be up front, put a gallery space in back, but save that 20% premium on the debt service and on the bond.
Well, I think we could, do something that's more of a phased approach as well. I think there's some things that could be done to that building right off the bat, and the city could still use it, and maybe also look for event space there and plan for, make sure that whatever we do doesn't prohibit us from putting an expansion on there at some point in the not too distant future, and see where we are. There's still some unknowns. As I mentioned earlier, there's still some unknowns in the economic recovery, some unknowns in where the pandemic is or is not headed. I don't think there's any clear picture on that. I hope that in 6 months we'll have a clearer picture on that.
No,
And I know, Leslie, I know your thoughts on this, and Karen, y'all are doing great with the Arts Council. There may be another way to skin that cat. But I think, like Leslie, you said, just simply thinking about, taking out the glass in the offices and being able to put some roll-up doors and taking out some walls in there for now and having more of an open space that could be utilized and get people using it and have a plan to put maybe more to it later. But right now, move forward with the city hall, you know, and think about what the future of that building might be at a later point.
No, I agree. And maybe I said it the wrong way. I'd like us to be a little bit more conservative, I guess, than
No, I hear you,
stuff.
Darren. and
So
it-
exactly the way you articulated. I think you said it better than I did. So I'm agreeing.
Okay.
But-
Leslie, I'd like to hear from you.
Let me ask you, John, is there economy in at least including future use, future design within what we're already having done with our city hall? That's, I mean,
Like at economies of scale?
yeah,
There are economies of scale. I mean, we did receive, you know, a quote that was much lower, 15% lower than what we had originally anticipated, based on the fact that it would be part of a bigger project. Now, I do think that, you know, the largest piece of that project was the construction of a brand-new theater, you know, a
Right.
separate theater.
right.
So, you know, if you looked at renovating the existing space, not adding on that particular piece, I think you could do that for considerably less, and still have and still open it up, fix the air conditioner, and
I'd like to see that space.
Yeah.
Left there, I mean, the outdoor space.
Yes,
And think,
yes.
okay, this is how it's gonna be programmed, and then see us come back to that. Even though we miss out on the economies of scale, to Darren's point, it helps us with the debt service, at least, you know, for the short term. And then, you know, we'll continue to work towards it. And like I said, I look at both you and Karen, because with the Arts Council, I think is gonna kick off some incredible things for our city. I don't wanna see more of that, but I'd kinda like to see us just
I know,
wade into it.
it's a bad time for everybody, and so
Yes,
we
ma'am.
can't just, you know, pursue
But you were
everything
speaking,
that we
well,
want, but I would hate, the only thing I want to say is I would hate for us to do anything without considering what adding on to the building and
Right.
what the whole plaza's going to look like, and
Right.
if we're going to have concerts, how that helps and works and all that kind of stuff too.
Absolutely.
So that's all. I
Sure,
just
sure.
think that needs to be considered.
and that's one of my pet peeves on this thing is that is the mechanicals, the electrical box and the air conditioners. I think those are in just this, for what we're doing, they're in the worst possible place.
Absolutely. They need to go up on the roof.
And they need, you know, we talked about spending $4 million to site work. Hopefully that's included in some of the site work, no matter what we do with the current city hall.
Yeah, they need to go up on the roof.
Yeah.
Whatever needs to be built structurally to allow that to happen. All right, you got your direction on that, Brian? Is that good for our city hall discussion?
I mean, I guess what I needed to hear from John was that staff is comfortable that we're going to be able to do this. And, I mean, I know you're recommending it, and for all the right reasons, and I agree with everything the mayor said, I agree with everything John said. But I want to make sure, I just wanted to hear from you that staff is comfortable with these numbers, that we can meet this debt service. Because I'm just going to say this, I like the idea of the old City Hall being an arts center, and I like the performing arts theater being done. And I'm not, you know, the numbers that you showed me the other day in your office was $750,000 for City Hall and an additional $250,000 if we wanted to do the whole shebang for the rest of it. So $15 million versus $20 million is basically what you showed me. I am kind of looking at it like, okay, so we're talking about helping our businesses. We're talking about doing things as a city to help our businesses. I'm not so sure that I'm wanting to delay doing the black box theater and that kind of stuff, because in the industry I'm in, you know, we're taught that you have to, it's not enough to put in restaurants in downtown. You have to have entertainment. You have to have reasons for people to come and stay downtown.
Got to make it beachfront.
And, you know, if I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to drive to Himalayas for dinner and just get back in my car and leave, I had a great dinner, but I didn't do anything else for the city. I didn't participate in anything. I just came down and had dinner. So I think, honestly, if we can come up with $750,000 or what you just now said, $800 and something thousand to do City Hall, then we can just go ahead and do the whole shebang and get it done. If we put it off and say we're going to come back to it, my fear is it's just not going to happen. Because a lot of times when we put things off and say we'll come back to it, it just doesn't get done. Not as a city, but I'm saying even in our personal lives.
No,
It just-
you're right, Brian.
So if we're going to do it, let's just do it and get it done. And so I'm just going to say, if you're telling me you're comfortable that we can do City Hall, then I'm telling you I'm comfortable that we can do the rest of it and just get it done and give folks a reason to come downtown and spend their money and do more than just get in their car and come to dinner. So I would say let's just keep moving forward if we're going to do it.
How often do you see that being programmed? I guess that might be a better question for you guys than for staff.
Yeah, this is where my interesting conversation came in. There's a woman who is on the Chamblee Arts Commission she's worked with Dad's Garage. She's outfitted another theater downtown near the Rialto, a 200-seat thing. She looked at the plans and was very, very insightful about okay, so where are your closets? And she has all sorts of insight about what needs to go into an art space to make it viable. And then she is also one of those people who does business plans for theaters. And she's talking every weekend. She's talking let's do this, because that's what she does. We would need to hire someone like her
Right.
to make the space. We just couldn't come up with it on our own. It's not let's try this weekend. No,
Yeah.
that has to be a business plan.
Okay.
And there are several ways to approach that.
Because I do think if you have a Dad's Garage or Daddy's Attic type place, that's a different conversation. I'm looking at it more from the perspective of we've had 3 different theater companies here between Plaza Fiesta, downtown, other places that have failed, and failed pretty quickly. If we're going to go spend all this money for this space, it's going to get used 1-2 times a month, a special event here or there, then we're wasting our time. If
That's
there's someone like that's going to come in and program it all the time, and we're going to get bodies, and we have that captive before we start,
Right.
then I think that changes the nature of the conversation. But then I would go back to, it becomes a structural conversation. Is there another way to do it? Can you get that contract locked in ahead of time to make sure that it's going to
Right.
be active? Because there's nothing worse than building a building and having it sit vacant.
Right.
Or using it for a year and these companies failing or going away because no one's showing up, and then you're just stuck with this big building that you use 4-5 times a year.
Right. Dad's Garage has been in business how long? The Rialto has been going for how long? The thing up in, is it Duluth, the
It's
Red Clay
Lawrenceville,
Theater?
Yeah. Button Theater? No, not Button Theater.
Well, yeah, there's a
There-
theater.
New
there-
Horizons or
I know
something.
the guy that runs it.
There are plenty of success stories, that we can look at, and we don't necessarily have to entirely pattern what happens on that, but there are plenty of success stories, and there's nothing like that around here.
Yeah, I
You
think the
really
one
have
thing
to
we
go.
do, we all agree that the city doesn't need to be in the business of
Oh,
running a
no.
theater.
Right.
Right,
So,
right.
exactly.
You would need
yeah.
to hire somebody else to do it,
Yes.
but I think we can build it and get it done.
Can we find them you think we can find someone on the front end before shovel hits dirt?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of as a built to suit? I mean, can we?
Well, I mean, what the woman that I was talking to last night was look, the first thing you need to do is you need to have a business plan.
Right.
The first thing. Then, maybe explore how much funds you think you can raise. Do a study on, is there enough money out here to maybe raise some funds for this? She's talking all sorts of really front-end stuff that's not build the space and we'll see what we can do with it, which makes things a longer process. But it was very,
Well,
very
and-
interesting.
Who's raising the funds and who's doing it?
That's
I guess
That's exactly
that's where the,
what
That's
Kate
the study.
Warner does.
the study.
oh, okay.
So do we need to allocate money for a study with someone like that to determine the viability and try and, market it and bring folks on board before we commit to it?
I think we
yeah,
can do
I
them
don't
at
think
the
it's a
same time.
bad
I think
idea,
they can be
yeah.
parallel.
Yeah, I think we can design it for sure, because that's part of what we're going through. I mean, that's relatively low money. I mean, and then to keep the ball rolling and keep everything going, and then if we have to pull back on the actual construction of it for whatever reason, we could tier it back, whether we just do a remodel versus the full-blown versus whatever, so we can kind of suit that.
Phase
But
it
they're,
in.
but right now, they're going down the road,
We have not authorized them to move forward with that renovation, the planning for that.
I think I've heard enough interest from everybody here to at least move forward with the design portion of it.
Yes.
And who you were thinking about in Lawrenceville is the Aurora Theater.
Yes,
And
that's
Yeah,
it.
okay.
I know Anthony Rodriguez.
Oh,
really
okay,
well.
okay.
I've met him on several, he goes on link trips.
Oh, okay.
So I've had many beers with him. I'm
Oh, good
sure we
times.
could get him to either get on a Zoom call with us, or if you want to go grab a couple beers, which I'd rather do.
Right, you and me both.
We'd go buy Anthony a couple beers, and I'm sure he would, it's an extremely successful theater.
No. That's good to know.
I'm just asking that we're conservative and we look at it in parallel and we
Yeah.
make sure it's gonna work before we build it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
And-
yeah.
And so the
And
other
that's
part,
wise.
the other part about a building, and we've had this discussion going all the way back to where we decided not to build a recreation center on the International Village, where the International Village Park is, was it came down to O&M. Right? So, yeah, we can budget the money for the capital improvement, but then where does the operating maintenance come from? And I think that's where talking with folks like the Aurora Theater, Dad's Garage, others, y'all with your arts council, which is exactly why we formed an arts council in the
Right.
first place, was to help us help staff to look at these things.
And this is something that it's not just going to, there are many different things that can happen during the week as well. This could be 7 days a week programmed. So it's not,
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
we just
done
look at other
well.
ones too, and I agree with you,
Done well.
Darren. There are certain things I think we need to be in the business of. Brian said it best. We're not in the business to run a theater, but we are at times in the business of putting in infrastructure in place to help drive what we want to see. And partnering, right? If we learn nothing else coming out of the Great Recession, I think it's why we're so successful right now, and why we will continue to be successful and come out of this pandemic stronger than others, is we truly have found that private-public partnership way about going about and getting things done. We talked today about partnering with a non-for-profit. We've talked about partnering with our development community. We start talking about partnering with the arts community. I think that's where we're knocking out of the park. So, well, good. I didn't think that was going to go in that direction.
So can you summarize that, where we're going with this?
Going
Well-
crazy.
I
We're
heard
going
design it,
forward.
design
Onward
it,
and
study it,
upward.
revisit it.
At the last council meeting, we moved the contract amendment with GMC forward. We said we would talk about it today. If that's something you'd like to move forward, we can do that based on action today, or we can bring it back to council at the next meeting.
Motion to move forward to get this thing done.
second, third, fourth.
All in favor of that
Can-
passing
can we-
by consent.
Where's
John,
my
you know
green
what you're
thing?
doing.
Can we study it concurrently though? The business plan or whatever we need to do to make sure that it's viable?
My recommendation on that would be to have the Arts Commission, to work with the Arts Commission on that, and I believe we can start that process.
Sure.
Very good.
Well, and Catherine, of course, she's part of it.
And they would just know that, before we, stroke a check to start putting shovel in the ground, that we would like to see something, and
Of course.
so
Yeah.
that would.
Absolutely.
Well, good.
Before we move on, I know you're anxious to move on. I just want to, rather than having a million different discussions with y'all privately, I just want to say my fears and hopes for the city hall going forward. My concerns are entering into approximately $2 million worth of debt a year in a downturn, where none of the arrows seem to be going up. I just know that it's a little bit of a riskier move than I might personally make. But I also understand that this is an unknown. When I face an unknown, I typically tend to want to put my feet back on solid ground and not, take a risk. But perhaps the risk is not as large as I perceive it to be. I am concerned also about the other news about other people building in the downtown center. I agree with Eric that if we show our commitment to our downtown area, that will send a very strong message to developers. I'm a little concerned that we're going to be sticking our neck out and sending the message with our taxpayers' money rather than with developers' money. But it doesn't seem like the developers of the other projects are all on solid footing right now, and perhaps that's a misconception. But it seems like they're all just kind of going,
Yeah, I don't think that's,
is that not correct?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I mean, things have slowed. There's the challenge with the office market.
Yeah.
And Seven Oaks, if the way you want to do. The capital markets are frozen some. Lots of folks aren't going back to Class A office until January 1.
right.
A lot of
Yeah,
people working
minimum,
from
yeah.
home. People are trying to rethink what their strategy is. What is extremely successful right now is what Parkside Partners started with 5256, and that is folks being able to adaptively reuse some of the warehouse space around here. As I mentioned, I'm talking with folks all the time that want to move a restaurateur today, somebody that wants to bring in 40,000 square foot full-on brewery that already is in the brewing business. This would be another location for them.
Yeah.
Catherine hears from folks, I asked about Pruitt just last week. They're continuing to move forward, but they're looking at their space requirements before they build a building because things have changed. So what I'm hearing, and I'll let John and Catherine speak to this, but what I'm hearing, people are like I told the guy at lunch today, I said, I usually hear from things at the front end of stuff and if you got a problem. And then stuff in the middle, but there is a significant interest in another large parcel of property in the city right now that we can't speak about in an open meeting because they don't want to know, people know who they are. Significant development that's looking to come into the city.
I know it seems like the projects that we've seen the plans for, et cetera, are just stalling. But they're still moving forward.
Good. I mean, that's the,
Yeah.
that's where not being in the process a whole long time,
there's-
doesn't serve me well, but,
There's significant cost increases in the construction markets right now. There's material shortages, there's supply delays, so there's a lot of different things going on, but it seems like things are still moving just slower.
If we lived in the Northeast where everybody was moving out, I'd be concerned. And I'm nothing against my friends in the Northeast, but man,
None taken.
The U-Haul trucks are like, and they're all moving down here. I mean, the numbers I see at ARC. So speaking of, and I sent some of this to y'all last month, and I could send you the same thing again, but start talking about sales tax revenues and really motor fuel tax, because that has a lot to do with the state funding different projects. July of 2020 was higher sales tax revenue than July of 2019. Okay, so those numbers didn't fall. Now, hotel, motel, and Brian can tell you that's been a big, don't mean to bring up a sore subject with your industry, Brian. I know it's a hard one, and that one hurts us. But like John said, with our SPLOST dollars are coming back up. And so I said, I feel very comfortable with where the future of our community, and the other thing too, I've said this to y'all individually, I've said before, coming out of the recession, and I think we all learned a lot, and that is that just because you got a great location, a great plan, doesn't mean that your community is going to move forward the way you want, because we didn't have a DDA, we didn't have a URA, the annexations helped us considerably, and that gave us critical mass, not just in resources that we had, but people that really felt connected to our city. And, through this pandemic, I have said all along, and I'll continue to say, that I believe we will come through this stronger than most other jurisdictions in the entire United States. And I say that with a lot of confidence because I remember how much it sucked coming through and out of the recession when we didn't have all those tools in our economic development tool belt.
So I recently rented a U-Haul and tried to return it, and they sent me to like 6 different locations because none of them had room on their lot. So just to,
Yeah,
it's not untrue what you just
right.
said.
No,
because
they're coming south, man, in big numbers, right? I mean, but anyway, so that, I don't know, John, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I would just say, I guess yes. Everything that has been said is accurate. The market right now that's got a little bit of question mark behind it is the office market, and it's because of the size of the projects. And I think that's something that we will know more about in the coming year or 6 months. But the rest, the other projects that have been talked about around the city center, they're all moving forward at a good pace.
a lot of those delays are DeKalb County related though because of the way they're staffing their offices and stuff too. So from what I'm hearing, they're
That's another problem with development right now.
But they're doing a great job at the Brand Smart with the testing, so I want to
Hey,
leave on that note.
Victor's
Let
where
me,
you can
they,
get 'em.
they broke the Kmart system though, because I went to the site Kmart testing site 3 or 4 times, and it was good, then it was not as good, and then it was like horrendous. So I'm hoping this new one is better because, like I said, I've been 3 times to the Kmart and didn't.
do we need to have some more discussion on the, are you're good? I don't want to cut you off.
No,
All right. So if we could, maybe, John, if you want to get into your other capital improvement project list.
Well, and really, this is just, I'm just providing information today. There's really no decision that needs to be made, obviously. We're going to be talking more about our capital improvement program going forward as we have more of these meetings. But the main thing is, I wanted to, you have a sheet in front of you that says 5-year program, 2020 budget, and then 5-year program, 2021 planning. And I wanted to share just kind of some of the things that have happened. The Peachtree Road Bridge was planned for this year, but because of cost, the cost came in higher than we anticipated. So we put that on hold. We are still planning to move forward with that, but we're trying to do some cost engineering and going back out to bids on that. So that's on hold, but something that we are working on.
That's something, that's related to your open container, which is something you kind of resisted because of that. So I think it becomes, it's a bigger picture than just the dollars and cents of that particular
Sure.
project, because, 7 more restaurants come to downtown Chamblee because we have open container that we're not doing because we don't, so it just, that's
Yeah.
another one of those kind of, you got to look, big picture on that. So I would definitely want to, really sharpen our pencil on that one too, as soon as possible.
Okay. We do have the stream restoration project that's moving forward. It's actually out to bid, and we anticipate those funds. We had anticipated starting that this year, but it's pushed out to next year, and it's a 2-year project. Dresden, the stream restoration at Dresden Park.
There's some matching dollars available
Yes,
on that?
half
So-
of that money is coming from the 319.
So
grant
in
money.
general, whenever we have matching funds, I think that moves something up on the,
It takes a little bit longer to complete those projects, yes. And then I just wanted to share kind of where we are with the paving project. We cut that back this year because of the water and sewer work. But next year, we anticipate spending that money that we didn't spend this year. Collections are, down slightly this year in SPLOST. We anticipate about 200,000 total by year end that we would be down from where we anticipated. But it's the SPLOST will go for several more years, and we do anticipate revenues, back up, and as we mentioned before, they are climbing now. The streetscape obviously has taken longer than we had hoped, and that's pushed out. Yeah, but we are working on that.
So still no ideas though?
What's that?
Still no ideas on a time frame?
Have we gotten a new updated time?
No, we are still waiting to hear from the contract insurance. There are a few things that they need to iron out before they can install it. Hopefully we'll do something before the end of the week. Mainly, we've been prioritizing the site and see what areas they need to, there are several areas that need to be demolished. And once that timeline is kind of tightened up, we'll get this thing.
So, in summary, if you couldn't hear that, waiting on the surety for a better understanding. We hope to hear from them by this week, maybe next week. The next project that we anticipate moving forward with is we had 2, the downtown streetscapes, which is the Broad Street, Urbandale, and Ingersoll Rand areas. That is something that we had anticipated starting on this year, but we've pushed that back. We are still in design for that, but we anticipate now that construction would begin in 2022. And then the rail trail, phase 4, 5, 6, and Pierce Drive, and that essentially takes the rail trail from the Walmart where it is, under the bridge, all the way to Pierce Drive. That is something that we've got all but one right-of-way parcel for, and we have the designs at 99% completion. So we anticipate going out to bid on that project before the end of the year, which is a little slower than what we originally anticipated, but we anticipate that starting off, construction next year.
So Pierce is through the self-storage site. And is that the one that's the piece that's still missing, or is that?
No, we have that right away.
So we have that right away, so it'll come up like below Hopsticks and through Trackside.
There, it used to be the.
Well, that's
medical.
That's not Pierce, yeah, that is Pierce.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah, that's
sorry.
Pierce, so that's what
Stop.
stopped, that was basically come out there.
Right.
And then we have all the connections going from Peachtree Road down to the trail, because there's a couple gaps. Once you get past Hopsticks, Himalayas, there's no, I guess, was it Breathe, doesn't have any streetscape in front of it, and
So the rail trail actually goes to Pierce Drive and then cuts through behind that office building and the school. I think it's a Goddard School.
It is.
right.
Goddard
right.
School, and then comes out on the side, the Chamblee Dunwoody Way there, and cuts over in that direction. Then it becomes a high line and a low line that we talked about in some of our town center planning. And, that's another project that we anticipate moving
They're all
forward.
going out to a sidewalk that will take you to whatever, they're not just dumping out in the middle of the road, or.
Right. So we did receive CDBG funds for a sidewalk on Hardy Avenue. And that's a project that we would be moving forward with SPLOST as a match. And those it essentially goes next to the airport from, yeah.
From New Key Street.
New Chamblee Tucker Road area, New Peachtree. It kind of goes, yes, right. So we did receive grant money for that, and that covers 80% of the cost of that project. So we have budgeted SPLOST funds to cover the other 20%.
Is that also taking out that median?
I'll have to go back and look at that.
That's the
I'm not sure
median's on
about
Bragg,
that.
right, not Hardy? Am I wrong?
The meeting's up, Brad.
And then we are looking at moving forward with the Rail Trail 7 through 12, which takes you from, it's the downtown area, and that's something that we've applied for grant funds for. And then I did want to bring up, in addition to the Hardy Avenue sidewalks, I've included 2 projects that we're looking at for traffic improvements, and provided these to you. But essentially, one is on Chamblee Dunwoody Road in front of the, or near the high school where Pierce Drive comes out. Right now, it's a intersection where you can take a right or a left. We've got a lot of traffic in that area, and we think that's going to increase, especially with some of the plans that are happening with the 285 project. So to provide for more traffic flow through there, we did a study and are recommending that we make that a right turn, right in, right out on Pierce Drive on Chamblee Dunwoody, and then extending the turn lane to take you on to Peachtree Boulevard farther, and that would give more stacking capacity there. The other project that we're looking at and is the over next to Lowe's on Johnson Ferry Road. Initially, we are doing a signal study over there, but we're also looking at the stacking capacity of Johnson Ferry and the intersection there with some of the townhomes and apartment complexes, as well as a kind of a crossing area there. And so the idea of putting a median and a turn lane, or expanding the turn lane in that area, or clarifying the, it has been brought up in the past by a council member. But those are two projects that we looked at potentially adding for next year. Those are in terms of,
Back to the one in front of the high school.
sure.
So that's, I think Darren, Moses, and I have all got tickets. Driving through the board.
speak for yourself.
I know Eric has, and I know I have.
I drove by the door on Johnson Ferry.
So,
Wrong intersection.
that's more dangerous, but anyway. Are these, is this gonna have any kind of curbing, that this is all gonna be striped, and is this right in, right out, is that gonna be a significant, because it's like the one that's in front of Lowe's, you know, when you come out of Lowe's,
Mhm.
it suggests that you go
Right.
right in, right out. People just drive and cut over that, it's worthless, and it doesn't,
It-
you know.
I do that.
You do that?
It will be similar to that. I mean, we can try to make it more pronounced.
Don't make it as big as the Chase, please.
Chase. Oh, yeah. I mean, we can make it more pronounced.
I mean, if you're gonna do it, I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
if they're doing it, but if you're gonna do it.
I don't even think
just
Chase
do it.
is not on the curb for fire
Huh?
trucks. I don't even think like Chase is not on the curb for fire trucks. That one's way too tall. Gotta be a middle ground.
But that curbing would just essentially be similar to that, right in, right out.
Make it round.
These suggestions, some of these things are just suggestions that a lot of people ignore. And, as Brian says, he ignores them. He's got a big,
All we have to do is put a big, like, public art statue on it so that they can't drive over it.
what's that?
All we got to do is put a big statue on
Statue of the
it.
mayor pointing that way.
That's right, yes, I love it. With the light of liberty.
Dig them.
How many times I've seen semis drive over the streetscape and streetlights on, and hit that streetlight over in Chamblee, down maybe over the high school.
That was, they didn't replace that one anymore.
Yeah, it happens like weekly.
But I thought they stopped the one in front of the car wash. I thought they took that one out, and that didn't have to be replaced.
I feel like we're having a really good discussion about this. But I would say, yes, it will be similar to the Lowe's.
Very good.
The only other thing I had to add, those are for your consideration.
Okay.
The other thing I had to add is, as we look at that fifth year, and SPLOST coming up again in that fifth year, the current SPLOST was essentially only for transportation projects, and that was something that was legislative. We could have used it for some police, but we elected to do the transportation projects. I don't know what the requirements would be, coming up 4 years from now. I think it's something that we would definitely want to get in front of our legislative delegation and make some suggestions. Obviously, green space and parks was something that we had on our plan originally that we weren't able to really move forward. But I did provide you with the map, which this is the map that we had used previously, with some of the projects and the list of what we called second-tier projects that we discussed last time. These were the ones that we did not provide funding for. It's the second page in that packet. So this is just a starting point. Obviously, if there, we can go back and look at all 107 or 70, I can't remember, projects that were in our mobility plan. But these were the ones that we had originally identified as the second phase. So wanted to put these back in front of you for your consideration. And we can,
What page you're talking about, the one that says Chamblee capital improvement but unfunded?
yes.
Okay, so what-
And so, that's just something for us to think through as we get into building our capital budget or the 5-year plan later in the year. Really no discussion at this point.
I mean, we got a
a lot of stuff we're taking on, you know, so, I mean, some of these seem like they can be paused with relative no heartburn on them, but I
Well,
could be wrong.
These would all be really contingent upon getting some SPOS money in that fifth year, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sounds like we need to revisit that in 6
Yeah.
months or a year.
Yeah, I would think we'd want to start the process on council, and then next year or year after, really kind of maybe solicit input from other groups.
The connector in Keswick that goes from Keswick over to Sexton Woods, where the pipeline used to go, I think they talked about a boardwalk or something. I think that has some value because it kind of connects the two neighborhoods through a shorter route. But now that could be just stairs down to a gravel path and back up the stairs or something like that. But I don't know if that's on there, if that's any of these. But it seems like we could take advantage of the recent sewer construction in that area that's kind of opened that up and cleared that out for it to be accessed. I'm sure there's others like that. And then the Dresden Drive sidewalks that take you from, I believe it's the Quick Trip, all the way and there's actually some good topography in that area where you're kind of like behind people's houses, but the fence, there's that right of way. It's just kind of just flat ground. I mean, it could be paved over really fast, and then that would get you from the Quick Trip to basically where we're talking about the police station and the Keswick Dresden Park. I'm thinking of this right. There's not a whole lot of challenges there, and topography-wise, a lot of curb cuts or anything like that, because it's the back of a lot of houses that face the other way.
There's some topography on that, but we can overcome them, yes.
Right, especially on the right side if you're heading away from the Quick Trip and towards Dresden Park. The topography's more friendly than it is
Yes.
on
Yes.
the left side.
I recently got an email about that. Did I share
Don't
that
ask
with
me
you?
how I know all that.
Yeah.
What would you pick out for that, though?
Huh?
What would you pick out for that?
Well, it does have a Dresden Drive thing. It's just lower. It's Dresden Drive sidewalks, number 27 on the map number, and it's.
Well, right now, it's not funded, and we would just be looking at adding that in the fifth year.
I know, if I was giving this a priority, I might kind of shift it around, and I think it gives you a lot of walkability to city assets, and future city, the police station and all that stuff, and the soccer place that we were talking about, and all that good stuff.
And I want to move Longview sidewalks and Plantation Lane sidewalks up from number 28, last on the list. Especially Longview is incredibly dangerous, So many families,
I think we should go right through that corner lot.
people running, yeah.
Yes.
People running, people
Turn it
pushing
into a
baby
park.
carriages.
12-foot sidewalks right at that corner.
Yes, and a little
Well,
pocket park.
unfortunately, I had to take the one I put in out.
Isn't that the one you just got a grant for?
That's the one that it goes through, really next to the airport. So across the street, yeah, and it goes through there and comes back.
And it comes out on 6th Street and Claremont.
I think it goes by that fire station thing.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
It is.
we've got funding for that area, yes. And that was CDBG money, which is available, Community Development Block Grant money. It's only available in certain areas of the city, so.
All right, anything else?
Nope, gotta go.
Yep, we got to get going. I did want to point out that I got an email while we were sitting here from Bill Floyd that said that some of the cities are starting to see their CARES money. I don't know that we have or have not.
Go check the bank account.
Google into SunTrust.
He says, "I've been told that a few cities have already picked up checks and that others are expecting a wire transfer. Could you let me know if you have received your funds or when you have been told to expect them?" So just point that out.
So we're in September, so we'll meet again on the 2021 budget when?
So we'll move forward with these items here. We may bring something at the council meeting in October if we need to allocate specifically for that. And then we are going through an internal process. Our next the next time we bring council in would be when we have the requests in from our departments, which should be in late October. Is that correct? Yeah, late October, early November.
So one final thing I'd like to see us do, since you have so graciously moved the hotel motel tax back from public safety, is fund it towards the Arts Commission.
Okay.
And we thank you for that.
Yes. Are we, do we have any, are we good on this? Do we have any citizen comments? I don't see anybody. Do we have an executive session? I don't believe so. Therefore, by consent, I will call the meeting adjourned.
Yeah.
Hey, good job, guys.